to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
If you just tuned in, we're 3 minutes into a conversation. This is how me and Dr. Steve Perry often talk. Rosenberg's here. It's Ebro, Laura, and Rosenberg every day. Hey. And Steve Perry representing not only a phenomenal independent educator in charter schools, but you recently, sir, just opened up another branch of your charter school. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so we're in the Bronx, the Boogie Down Bronx. We're very, very excited. We're in Co-op City. Very excited to be there, in large part because the community, because it's the Bronx, they have their own flag, by the way. Just so we're clear, the Bronx is its own nation. It's a sovereign nation. And they made it clear that the parents who helped us get the school started in Harlem said, we'll get you started in Harlem. Just keep in mind that we're expecting you to come up to the Bronx. And that was a very clear note to us. And so we have, and have been moving and grooving in the Bronx ever since.
Talk to us about the Harlem school and obviously the Bridgeport, Connecticut school, Enrollment, and how you guys have been managing the pandemic and COVID.
So, I was just reading this great article in The Atlantic that talked about how the pandemic in many ways has exposed many of the limitations that we have in a traditional education system already. It also, for our schools, has done some of the same. It's shown us that there are things that we need to do, tighten up and fly right. But generally speaking, our enrollment has continued. We're down about 1%. Literally, I just read it this morning in one of the reports I get. So we're down about 1%, but otherwise our enrollment has been fine. Our daily attendance has been not as good as I would like it. In our Bridgeport and Harlem schools, up around 85, 90%. In the Bronx, on a daily basis, it's at least 98 to 99%. Last week, we're at 99%. And in one of our grades, 100% of our kids logged in. So it's just the kudos, hats off to our brothers and sisters in the Bronx who are just grinding out.
And if you're wondering about Dr. Steve Perry's institutions that he's started, it's been running now 15 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I bet. We're going into this is our 16th year. Thank you for remembering that. 16 years. Yeah.
Capital Prep. Look it up. It does require, a large participation from both the parents and the students. And can you talk about that kind of engagement that you do with the parents to make sure their students are on point?
So the first part of getting the parents engaged is getting them to trust us. So many of our parents, Black and Latin parents, have been done so wrong by the system themselves, like in a very real way, that it is right for them to doubt us. So the first part of parent engagement is really building the trust. The second part is doing it in some what would really be traditional but not typically educationally seen as not as traditional ways, which is having sports and after school activities. A parent could cuss you out earlier in the day, but if y'all are both yelling at the same referee, you tend to develop a bond in that space. And so creating multiple opportunities to engage the families where they are, bringing them together to support our children, that's the challenge. And in many cases, another challenge is sometimes when parents know a little bit, they feel like they know everything. And those are the parents who present some real challenges to us as well, especially now as we're getting ready to send kids off to college. They feel like the school that they know because they've heard of it, because they've seen the basketball team playing on CBS. And so now they want their daughter or son to go to that school, but that school is not for their child. It's too big for their child, for instance, and their child is going to get lost on the campus. There's another school that we have in mind that we think is going to support them because it's got a summer bridge program. It's got student support services. They're going to make sure Black and brown kids do well on campus. So it's sometimes the push and pull of that. But even when we don't agree, that's engagement too. So we have to look at it in multiple ways.
So we're in an interesting time in our nation's history with regard to education, right? There's so many charter schools. Parents are using whatever tools they can, if they have them, to make their own choices about school, with lack of trust in the public school sector, with, the bureaucracy and changing curriculums at the public school level. You hear a lot of parents talking about how they don't really like how long it takes to make adjustments an upgrade at the public school sector. Also, I'm hearing, I have a 6-year-old, so obviously I'm talking to other parents and listening to them about their concerns about where education is in getting your child into a professional path later on in life, and how much does school play a role in traditional school play a role in helping your kid get on that path. Some people are sending their kids to specialized schools. There's all different types of schooling going on. Dr. Perry, I would love to hear from you, for the parents, how you view where education is at today and where things are going and what parents should be looking for.
Well, I'll start with the bad news. The bad news is that what we refer to as public education has changed almost none since you were in school, since I was in school, since our grandparents were in school, since our great-grandparents were in school. We pretty much run schools the way that we always have. Put an adult at the front of the class, and that adult talks to everybody and tells them what it is that they think is important. That's pretty much teaching and learning in most schools. People say, that's not my school. Yeah, it is. It actually is. Then you hear people talk about teaching to the test, but if that many people were teaching to the test, then there'd be more people performing well on the test. So it's clear that either they're not teaching to the test or they suck at teaching to the test. So the bad news from the front lines is that the slow-moving, glacial-moving traditional education system continues to underserve those who need the greatest service, most specifically Black and Latin children, and those who specifically who are Black, Latin, and poor. However, there are enough people out there who want this smoke, who want this fight, who are prepared to go out there and do what they need to do to change the way in which education occurs in America, that there is a budding hope around this notion of school choice. And what I mean by school choice is just that. It means you have the right to select the school that you think is best for your child, that you take a look at what is best for your child. No one else gets to make that determination. If you're middle class or wealthy, then that's a fait accompli. You know that's going to happen. But if you are somebody who's poor or doesn't otherwise have options in your community, then it is not as automatic. So what has to happen is cats like you and others have to remind people, I say presumptuously, we have to remind people that it is our obligation to inform parents that this is the game. Where you send your children to school is the whole entire game. I wish I could tell you something different. Let me break it down for you. There are many children who are actually doing well. The top quartile of children are actually doing better during the pandemic, because in many cases the curriculum was slowed down to meet the middle and the bottom. So those kids who can do well, who thirst for information, who can consume the information in this space, they're actually thriving. But that's, again, the rich getting richer, so to speak. But those children who are in the bottom, Black and Latin children, poor children, those children are doing far worse. We're looking at losing at least a year of learning. Well, you put that into consideration, take the following into consideration. Our school in Harlem, 89% of the sophomores that we took in were below grade level. 89% were below grade level. Of that 89%, at least 89% were 3 grade levels behind. There's a learning recalcitrance that was already happening when we were in the brick and mortar space. So now what we find ourselves is those children who needed the one-to-one, who needed the face-to-face, are not getting that. And they're learning in small apartments in many cases where their sister's like right there, and she's doing math, and he's doing English, and the mother's in the other room.
Or
she's
even
trying
worse,
to work.
then you don't have Wi-Fi, and then your Wi-Fi's bad, and y'all splitting the Wi-Fi time, and all those other pressures of the COVID situation.
All real. And this is why it's so disgusting that the teachers unions in New York and throughout the country are doing what they always do, which is to stick a knife in the back of Black and brown parents. They're doing it again, man.
How?
Suburbs.
Give me an example of how.
Very simply by creating this hysteria around sending kids back to school. The suburbs are in school. Here in Connecticut, for instance, only one school system has not been back to school at all. You think it's a suburban school? Hell no. It's New Haven. New Haven hasn't been to school since this time last year. They haven't been in school at all.
Even though research and reports have shown that schools have been some of the safest places with regard to testing and infection rates.
Absolutely. In fact, the safest place for a child to be is in school. How's that possible? Because that's what the data says. First of all, in our schools, we have to test before you even get in the building. I mean, we have to check your temperature before you even get in the building.
Right.
Then we socially distance you. You're masked. No, very little movement. We have what are called AV days in the event that our school is not large enough to give you 6 feet of distance. So we create the distance by creating a smaller cohort of kids. Those kids travel very little. School for them sucks in many ways because it's not fun because they can't go. They can't be just kids like they normally could. But the alternative is sitting on your bed, literally, if I go on my Zoom right now and I go in my classrooms, I see children in bed, and I can hear their siblings behind them.
Right.
I mean, and so when the teachers union is doing what they can to keep mostly white suburban teachers out of the hood again, because that's all they're doing. It's convenient. I mean, come on, you get your coffee, you can do that. I mean, you can teach from home. Your kids are here if you want them, or your kids are in school.
And Doctor, it's done under the guise of we're seeing the numbers in these areas are worse. Thus, we don't want the kids from those houses to go to school. Is that the guise?
That's literally what it is. I mean, people, you got to hear me, and this is what drives me crazy, is that so many people who are working with our kids don't see our kids as human. They don't. They don't see, when they see the little cherub, beautiful black face, they don't see cherub, beautiful black face. Black children make up 18% of all kindergartners. They make up 49% of all kids who are suspended out of school who are kindergartners. 49%. You follow it all the way forward. The children who are suspended earliest are suspended most often. Those children suspended most often are least likely to progress at grade level. That's why you see the overwhelming majority of African-American Latino children who are behind grade level. If you're not at grade level by the time you are in the 3rd grade, that means 9 years old. 9 years old. This is not COVID. This is not pandemic.
This is just regular.
This is the traditional school regular. If you're not at grade level by the time that you are in the 3rd grade, you have a 75% chance of never reading at grade level in your life.
And most of the people in Rikers, have reading problems.
There you go. So if you go to Rikers, 75% of them, 75%, almost to the number, 75% are functionally illiterate. Take that one step further. Those people who are in prison, 49% of them, African American. It started when we were kindergartners.
Well, now,
so that little cherub, beautiful face, they didn't see it. That they criminalized children's behavior. So now you want them to go back, and some of them might be sick. Oh, hell no. I'm gonna teach from my house. I'm good. Y'all figure this out. I don't care if your Wi-Fi is glitching and I can see your Wi-Fi glitching. I don't care that I can hear your sister over there learn. I can hear your mother. I see your uncle walking behind me in his drawers. That's cool with me. As long as y'all don't touch me. That's why in Chicago, it was so foul and so gross. The teachers union actually encouraged the teachers to not physically go in the building. So the kids went in the building and the teachers sat outside in the freezing cold with their computers. It's disgusting. These are children, man. Come on.
So, Dr. Steve Perry, Capital Prep, you can look him up. He's got books. He's done a lot of work out here. We know these things start young, and we know America has a white nationalist racist problem. It was once again proven, racism problem that was proven again on January 6th when a bunch of violent white folks ran up in the U.S. Capitol and police basically let them in and did not feel the need to even put up what mostly a fight or even be prepared for it the same way they would have been if it was some black protesters outside. They would have had the whole damn feel like Green Berets out front.
They wouldn't have made it out of the airport.
No. But I think all of this is reinforced by even what you're saying in our education system. But when you talk about school choice, how do we help make sure that kids from households where parents aren't as sophisticated, aren't paying attention to these opportunities, how do we help those other children that don't have someone making sure that they're on the right path?
So I'm gonna push back on that because this is a common trope that people have, even the most well-intended. When they say, for instance, that the least sophisticated, the truth is that the streets talk. The issue is not one of sophistication for our parents, it's access. They know that Nightingale is better than PS 120. They know that.
Right.
They know which schools are best. I mean, come on. They know better than anybody which schools are best. They absolutely know. They just can't get into it.
And why can't they? Why can't they get into it?
They know that because what happened was it was an unholy pact. When the charter schools, for instance, let's just use charter schools, for instance, in New York City, when charter schools were being developed, the teachers unions and the legislators made an agreement to put a cap on the total number of schools. It's just an arbitrary number. It doesn't mean anything. That wasn't based upon data. It's just this is how many. And so we've met that cap. So now what happens is a cap means we can't open any more and we can't open any more seats. So if you want to come to most of our schools, there are not any seats available. So we need to lift the cap to create more opportunities. That's not an issue of the parent sophistication. That is an issue of the political gamesmanship of the United Federation of Teachers and many of the Democrats who support them, who are supported by them.
Is this something that voters, the parents, can vote to change and pressure their legislators?
Can and must, especially in the hood. Let me tell you why. Because most of your legislators don't send their kids to your schools. That's just the truth. Go around, ask the people who are your legislators, which raggedy-ass school do they send their kid to? There isn't one, because they don't. All these progressives who are black and brown who would talk about how important public education is, either they didn't go to neighborhood public school. And listen to this, like AOC, and she's out there talking about how she's a progressive and she's for public education. But her father exercised the ultimate school choice. He got up and moved out the Bronx. He's like, forget this, I'm out. For what reason? So he can send the kids to better schools. Right. So you can't benefit from a system and then when you've gotten yours, shut the system down. There's a whole bunch of words that we use to describe people like that. We don't need to, but you understand the point. Hypocrite being the first of them. So what parents must do is hold their legislators accountable. Hold your councilmen and assemblymen and women accountable for, hey, I want my kid to go to school where your kid goes to school. That's all I want. Wherever your kid gets, that's what I get. Imagine going to somebody's house over there frying up some chicken, and then you say, well, they put it out in front of you. You say, well, what are you eating? I don't eat that, man. You'd die from it.
So when you look at the chancellor here in New York City and you look at DeBlasio trying to rezone and leave seats open and really push the issue of trying to get kids from different areas to go to different schools and really address the racism and segregation that is a part of the New York public school system, what do you see and what do you think?
DeBlasio is the face of the problem. In 1968, there was a teacher strike. The union struck 3 times. You know why? It was because black families in Ocean Hill, Brownsville, wanted community control of their schools. They wanted to be able to hire black teachers. This is the truth. In 1968, they wanted to do that, and the teachers unions were against them. And the reason they were against them is because they felt that their freedom of choice was an existential threat to their structure, which is the fourth leg of government, where the unions come in unelected and unobstructed and make all the decisions. So when black people rose up and said, that's not going to happen here, they came and they shut it down. The same thing is happening now. Now we, black educators, are creating our own schools. Latin educators are creating our own schools. And people like DeBlasio saying he doesn't want us to create our own schools. He's actually making it harder for black and brown people to create our own schools. We don't have to worry about celebrating just Black History Month in February. We celebrate it every day. The majority of our staff are black and Latin. I mean, come on. The majority of our kids are. We don't have conversation around diversity because we are our diverse population, but they don't want that because what he wants to do is maintain the relationship with the United Federation of Teachers, who in turn ultimately supported him, but didn't initially support him. See, we have to hold people like, Blasio's on the way out, but people who will be in his position accountable. Let me just take one step further. It's easy for us to focus on those lunatics who attacked the Capitol on January 6th and talk about white supremacy. But what we don't think about is the other forms of white supremacy, which are far more pervasive. White supremacy that allows one person to never have to worry about where they live. Have you ever heard a white person say, damn, I can't live here because there are too many white people? Or where am I going to send my kids to school because there are too many white people and there won't be enough white teachers who will support them? It just doesn't happen. That's the other part of white supremacy that comes from our friends. These are the people who we rock with. These are people who are our friends. They never have to think about that. And if you have never had to get tense up in the butt when you see a police officer about to pull out, when you drive and you sitting there thinking, oh my God, do I have my license registration? You didn't even do anything wrong, but you see the police officer pull out, then you get the benefits of white supremacy, and you don't even acknowledge that. Those of us who live under the threat of death for being nothing other than black need to be freed from the failed school system that will never support us. It's not ever going to support us under any circumstances. They've already made it clear. Anybody who thinks anything different is smoking something really, really wrong. And DeBlasio and those who try to keep us in those schools are just part of the problem.
Well, I mean, you make it sound more blatant than when I speak to principals who have, in Brownsville and other places who have turned their schools around, who are black, engaged with the community at a public school, thinking that, they're doing all the right things. What you're saying is it sounds like they're not.
I'm saying that grass growing in the crack of a sidewalk should never be confused as a field. Just because someone, somewhere, does something that is effective does not mean that the school system is effectively educating our children. And there is not a single person whose word or work we would ever respect who would ever tell you that. There is no one anywhere who would even sort of argue that the American neighborhood public school system that we've come to know is going to ever equitably educate African and Latin children. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And if it is, what are we waiting for? What are they waiting for? Another invitation? So it's not happening. And I submit to you, any of these folks who claim that their schools are so superior, that they work in the neighborhood school that they work in so superior, ask them one question. Where's your kid go to school?
And what if their answer is my kid goes to school where I teach?
Then I will start to believe in them. But then ask where their teachers' kids go to school. Because if you go to one of these independent private schools, as many people in there who have kids there are, they try to send them to that school. The headmaster, she or he, sends their children to that school. It's what it is. When I can tell you that 96% of the children that we accept in the 6th grade can't do math at grade level, they came from somewhere. All 5 boroughs. 96%. Do you understand how impossible it would be to do something 96% of the time unless you did it absolutely on purpose? This system was literally designed to make sure that black children and Latin children, as well as poor children of all races, do not gain access to the intellectual wealth that will be necessary to create the kind of economic wealth that would change their circumstances. Forget giving us 40 acres and a mule. They don't even want to give us access to learning how. It's what this is. School is supposed to teach you how. Once you get the confidence, you can build the competence. And when you see a confident learner, she or he will learn anything. And there's no topic that they think is beneath them or above them, I should say. They can pick up anything. And that's all this is about. It's not about learning algebra for the sake of learning algebra. This is the real mind screw. It's not about learning algebra for the sake of learning algebra. It's about learning algebra to prove that you can learn a topic that you may have no interest in. Because you may find yourself in a situation where you discover you want to open a business, but you don't know all the parts of a business. Or you may want to open a school, you don't know all the parts of a school. Or you want to work at a radio station, you don't know all the parts of a radio. Whatever it is, when you have that confidence, when you're a learner, when you're a strong learner, can't nobody make you feel like you can't do that. It's just not possible.
That's a gem right there.
That confidence makes you 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And it makes, even when you get a boss who makes you feel like you ain't doing a great job, you know you're smart. You know that you can control your destiny. And that is freedom. That's the thing that even when they locked Mandela up for 27 years that they could not break. That's what we want to build in our schools at Capital Prep. That's what we want to build in school choice. We want that level of intellectual freedom that makes it possible for black children to say, yeah, okay, I'm black. So let's get it on. Put me in a classroom. My goal is for when you look at a black teacher, you think of them like you think of a black basketball player. When you think of them like you do a black football player. I want, when you see a black school leader, I want you to think of them like you think of a black musician. Like he's probably better than the other ones. That's what I want you to think of. When you see a black scientist, I want you to think, that dude's probably nice.
I already do.
When you think of,
because for me to see him, that means that he was somebody to cut through.
no doubt. But
Or she.
unfortunately, she or she, much respect to that, he or she, by and large, are superhuman. They are people who ain't regular. If you see somebody of that ilk, somebody who's doing those kinds of things, then they're getting it done. They're not regular. They ain't typical. And when you see somebody that's that talented, that gifted, you've got to give them all the props that are necessary.
Dr. Steve Perry, if parents want to begin the process of joining Capital Prep, or maybe somebody sees what you've been doing, is it 3 schools now or 4?
So we have 5 sites.
5
and then
sites.
we have another one that another one that we had opened up in the original one up in Hartford. But yes, they can go to wearecapitalprep.org, and we want your kids to apply. Please go to wearecapitalprep.org. Give us an opportunity to be a part of your children's lives. There's no more humbling and rewarding experience than for a parent to say to us, here's my child, do with her what you must to get her to where she deserves to be. It is the greatest feeling. It is what wakes me up. I can't believe that of all the people on earth that God chose to give this opportunity to, that I'm one of them. I just can't even believe it. There's nothing greater than doing this.
And is Capital Prep something that if a community wanted to figure out financially how to bring that to life for their kids and their community, is that something that is a blueprint for people?
It is. So we are open to expansion, but not expansion for expansion's sake. I don't have that kind of ego. What we want to do is we want to come to communities where we believe that there's a symbiotic relationship, that there's an opportunity for us to create something that's meaningful. Places like New Jersey are some places we're very, very interested in being a part of. I've seen the good news, bad news is that there's no shortage of work. There's no shortage of communities where parents actually want their children to go to school with African American and Latin school leaders, not just Black people who work in a white school system, because that's not the same thing. There are a lot of Black professional athletes, but very few own a team. It's not the same. Everything is different. Working somewhere doesn't mean that you have the power to make the decisions. We get to make the decisions in our school. So a lot of the stuff that's really cool about the work that we get to do at Capital Prep, our theme is social justice. So as a social justice institution, we're constantly addressing issues with our children. We don't have to worry about setting aside a certain day to have these conversations. It's just what we do. It's just how we exist. So if that's the kind of academic experience that you want for your children, regardless of their color, because honestly, Brother Ebro, I think that imagine if more white people who had met Black people earlier on in their lives, like for real, like it actually met African Americans in leadership positions, or that they had the pleasure of being at an organization founded by and led by Black and Latin people. It would change their perspective on the world. Maybe they wouldn't walk around so mad. Maybe they would understand that they do still, no matter what, get the opportunity to live where they want, to shop where they want, and not have to ever worry. They don't even understand right now, because they're so isolated in their space, what it's like to just go into a high-end store and shop. just shop without thinking about if they're being followed or
being
to
profiled
drive a
or
car.
being, any of that.
Right. Any of that. Just that non-thought. I was driving last weekend, and I was real story. Police pulled out, and I started going through all of it. I wasn't Dr. Anybody. I wasn't the head of any schools. I wasn't the founder of anything. I was just a Black man in a car, and I'm thinking, all right, did I have my stuff in my car? What did I do? I'm looking down the speedometer. I'm looking at everybody's driving the same speed as me, and I'm thinking, I'm going through all the things, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Do I need to turn my phone on when this thing happens? Like, this is the checklist that I'm going through. I didn't even do anything. Because I've been so conditioned by the United States of America that this could probably go badly. And then even when he pulled off into a different direction, still not feeling safe, thinking, okay, if he pulls off this way, I should probably go a different way than I would normally go to where I'm going. That's not paranoia. That's America. So if for no other reason, then we need to train white people to better understand their advantages and the disadvantages that their advantages create for the rest of us. We need more Black and brown people creating schools in our communities, regardless of the color of the community.
Dr. Steve Perry, thank you for your time today. Capital Prep, go check him out, man. Always good to see you. You know, we'll continue our debates offline.
Thanks, Doc.
Always, always, always.
All right, Doc. Happy New Year, man. Talk to you soon.
Likewise.